This is the true story of Napoleon Bonaparte, a figure whose ambition redefined the borders of Europe and whose tactics remain the foundation of modern military doctrine. By 1814, after a decade of total war, his empire had collapsed. Forced to abdicate by the Allied powers, the man who once ruled millions was restricted to the tiny Mediterranean island of Elba. Less than a year into his exile, he made a choice that stunned his captors. With only 1,000 loyalists and a handful of ships, he slipped past the British naval patrols and began a voyage back to the French coast. For any other ruler, Elba would have been the final chapter, but Napoleon's return shattered the fragile peace established in Paris, forcing the world to confront the reality that his influence was far from extinguished. The restored French king sent the 5th Regiment to intercept the usurper. When the two forces met near Grenoble, the soldiers leveled their muskets at the man they had once served. Napoleon did not order a charge. He stepped forward alone, opened his gray overcoat to expose his chest, and told the gathered troops that if they wished to kill their emperor, he was standing right before them. The response was immediate. The soldiers dropped their weapons and cheered, turning a potential execution into a parade. Without a single shot being fired, he marched toward Paris as his former enemies became his vanguard. This bloodless coup, now called the 100 Days, rekindled the fears of the great powers. Britain, Prussia, Austria, and Russia immediately mobilized, declaring war not on France, but on Napoleon himself. He was now in a race against time. To survive, he had to destroy the nearest Allied armies in Belgium before the full weight of the European coalition could descend upon his borders. On this 1815 map, his strategy was to exploit the gap between his enemies. Driving his army like a wedge between the British and Prussian forces, he prevented them from merging. His target, Wellington's Anglo-Allied army. On June 18th, they met near Waterloo. Nature, however, intervened. Torrential rain the night before turned the Belgian soil into a thick, clinging mud, stalling the movement of men and machines. This environmental friction was devastating. Napoleon's artillery relied on the rapid deployment of heavy cannons to break enemy formations. But the guns sank into the soft earth, forcing him to delay his attack for hours. The assault was a brutal struggle for every inch of ground. Wave after wave of French cavalry columns crashed into Wellington's defensive squares. Despite mounting casualties, the French pressure was immense, and Wellington's line began to buckle. Napoleon's gamble seemed destined to succeed. That window slammed shut with the arrival of the Prussian army. Under Field Marshal Blücher, they emerged from the woods to strike Napoleon's exposed right flank, just as his main force reached its breaking point. As this diagram shows, the French army was now caught in a lethal pincer. They were forced to fight a two-front battle with no reserves left to stabilize the line. In a final attempt to reclaim the momentum, Napoleon committed the Imperial Guard. These elite veterans had never been defeated in a direct assault and were considered the most formidable infantry in Europe. But against the concentrated fire of the British line, even the Guard faltered. As they began to fall back, the word spread through the ranks: the Guard is retreating. The myth of their invincibility was the only thing holding the French army together. Once it broke, the retreat turned into a total collapse, ending Napoleon's military career and his reign forever. This second surrender was absolute. The British government took no chances, deciding that the continent would only be safe if Napoleon was removed from the map entirely. They chose St. Helena, a jagged volcanic rock in the middle of the South Atlantic, a prison defined by thousands of miles of empty water. There, the man who once controlled the fate of nations spent his final 6 years in a drafty bungalow, dictating his memoirs and watching the horizon until his death in 1821. His physical presence was gone, but the systems he had installed across Europe, from centralized administration to professional bureaucracies, were already becoming the standard for the modern state. His tactical innovations, specifically the organization of independent army corps that could move and fight separately, became the blueprint for every major military power in the 19th and 20th centuries. Even more enduring was the Napoleonic Code. By replacing a chaotic web of local feudal customs with a single clear set of laws, he established a legal framework that still governs civil life in dozens of countries today. 2 centuries later, his legacy is not found in the lands he conquered, but in the institutional structures of the modern world. Whether viewed as a ruthless tyrant or a brilliant reformer, his influence remains a permanent fixture of our history. This was the final chapter of Napoleon Bonaparte's incredible journey. Thank you for watching the complete story from beginning to end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to History Stories Dose so you never miss the next chapter of history. Thank you for being part of this historical journey. Stay tuned to History Stories Dose for more epic stories that changed the world.